Good morning. You're listening to Drinking Socially, the official Untappd podcast.
Your inside look into what's happening in the Untappd community and the world of beer.
I'm John, and it's been so hard to keep a secret. Really, ever since I can remember learning what a secret was, I wanted to share them all. Today, we can finally reveal the Drinking Socially badge.
Whoa.
We'll cover the details after we crack open a beer, but Harrison and I and the team at Untappd, and I think even my mom a little bit, we've all been working hard to make sure we get this badge set up for season 3 and get us a little bit closer to drinking together.
And I'm Harrison, and indeed, today is a huge day, exciting news to go along with today's brews. This has been a long time in the works, so we're all pretty jacked up over here. Looking forward to filling you in on the details of this badge and a bit. Excitement certainly abounds, but first, Drinking Socially is released every other Wednesday morning and can be found at podcast.untappd.com.
Or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Wow.
Excited about the badge.
That's right.
But before we get there, Harrison, it's been a while since we've had a beer together.
That's right. Sad.
Tell me about your weekend, air quotes, as it's been longer than that. But any cool beers, any cool things you've been doing?
Yep. Yeah. Kind of revisited a classic, or a beer that I really started to enjoy since moving down to North Carolina. I had Ninja Porter from Asheville Brewing Company this past weekend, which is a classic American-style porter. It actually won the 2014 World Beer Cup gold medal, and then the bronze again in 2018 for the brown porter category. And it's classic as can be. It's nice, kind of rich body. It's not too heavy. A lot of chocolate happening with some caramel and coffee notes, and they use some really earthy hops, which I love in a porter, like Mount Hood and a Northern Brewer and Cascade, I think. So it's just a great beer. And it's been like in the 60s here, so it's not exactly what I would call a porter during weather, but at night it gets a little bit cooler, and definitely enjoyed a few of those this past weekend. And before that, because you're right, John, it's been a little longer than a week since we've done this. I was traveling for the holidays and up to Connecticut, where my family and I am originally from, and got to have a Counterweight Brewing Company's Headway IPA, which is awesome.
That's a pretty big deal up there, too.
Yeah, and if you don't know, Matt, who started Counterweight, was New England Brewing Company's brewer for decades, or not decades, for a long time, for almost, I think, about 10 years. And he is kind of responsible for a lot of the recipes that kind of really made them a pioneer in this crazy New England style beer renaissance or wave or whatever it is that we're all in the middle of now. So he has his own brewery now, and called Counterweight, and their Headway IPA is their flagship. It's awesome. It's available all over the place, which is wild because it's very, very good. And if you didn't tell me that, I'd assume it would be really hard to get, and there'd be lines at the door for it. And yet I had it for $3 at a bar. And it was amazing.
Thanks for bringing it. Oh, nope, never mind.
That was right. That was also a nice little kind of asterisk to that story, as it was a Monday night, and I showed up having been in that state for like a year, went to the bar that I used to go to a lot, and saw it on the menu and was like, I'll just get it. It's, whatever amount of money. And they were like, oh no, everything's $3 tonight. It's Trivia Monday or whatever. And I was like, well, then you have me for a while. I'm going to be here enjoying some beers. So that's always nice to walk into a deal like that, which I definitely did. What about you, John?
New England Brewing, they did Fuzzy Baby Ducks.
They did. They still do.
One of the founder, Greg Avolas, it's one of his favorite beers.
That's right. Yep.
Mine as well.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It was. I didn't travel for the holidays, which was just as stressful as traveling. But I got some beer Christmas presents. I got a shipment from an online store, so my fridge was full of all these exciting beers. And after reviewing my year-end beer stats from last year, I made a cognizant point to try and check in more of the beers I drink. So I'm already killing it. I think I'm at like 3 beers a day so far. Maybe time to slow down.
Putting the work in.
But looking at the supporter stats, it's really cool. I can go back and I can remember. It was a key lime pie Berliner from Weldworks. I picked up a few of those, and every time I drink one, it tastes like key lime pie.
It's amazing.
maybe more like key lime pie than beer. There's graham cracker. I love that beer.
Yep, it's awesome.
So I've had fun with that. And then Harrison was actually talking to me about some low ABV beers coming out. I know Bell's is working on one, and we got pretty excited about what is to come for the warmer weather, although it feels mean to say that. It's been a pretty warm winter so far.
I know. Yeah, right. It get much warmer. Well, I mean, yeah, anyway, the beers that are prepared for it to the breweries are, it seems like, because there's I've seen probably a half dozen or so just in the past week. Breweries announced that they're going to have some about 4% hazy session IPA added to their year-round lineup, a lot of them. So many that it probably begs to have its own episode of Drinking Socially, perhaps in the near future, kind of going through.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
As the rest of the world perhaps catches up and warms up to us, might look for that in the near future, because it's kind of surprising it's taken this long, but here it is. We're going to probably enter into early prediction 2020, the year of the session hazy IPA.
Why is it taking so long to get us here?
Right. But here we are. So we're going to check them out.
In terms of weekend news, I honestly, there was nothing really that kind of caught my eye, big beer news, but Becca, who she's been helping us out, a behind the scenes guru.
Absolutely.
Picking up trend data and pointing us in the direction of some cool beer stories. I think she was actually the first person that told me that Harrison's friends at Russian River are going to be making Pliny the Younger maybe a little bit more attainable for us regular folk.
Perhaps, yeah. I don't know what the distribution on this is like, but you probably saw, or hopefully saw. If not, I'm going to let you know right now that they're going to bottle Pliny the Younger for the first time, which is pretty wild to even think about, because forever that kind of phrase, "they'll never bottle Pliny the Younger," was like, death and taxes. Was just part of talking about craft beer. And yet here we are. And we've talked about Russian River before on this show, and how they recently, built a brand new brewery, and they can make a lot more beer now, and all this really cool stuff. And we're starting to see, along with more Pliny the Elder, kind of expanding that distribution footprint of that beer, and Blind Pig. Now, it looks like, they're going to have more Pliny the Younger, which is really cool. And I've been fortunate enough to have the beer a couple times. It always came to Philadelphia kind of in early March after its February release at Russian River. So that was fortunate for me to have it a lot. But now, maybe even more people can enjoy it. Because it is one of those beers that obviously has crazy hype, maybe no more hyped up beer out there. And when I had it, I was not let down at all. It was perfect. It's a perfectly made beer, and that's what may shock some people. It's not like a hazy bomb. It is a West Coast IPA that'll get you where it counts. So pumped about that, just that more people can have it, because it is a really well-made beer that's extremely delicious, and now a style that you don't see on as much as you used to. So cool for a lot of reasons.
Bitter West Coast triple. It actually sounds kind of like a relief. Maybe not at 10.25% ABV.
Right. I know.
I was looking on their website. There was some awesome. It's almost like a Black Friday shopping post. Expect to wait in line maybe 5 or 6 hours. 3 per person per day rules here. So this is really exciting. That you nailed it, Harrison. This is one of the beers that's just been on my hopefully someday list because of how incredibly difficult. I love when breweries make beer that I can't get. It's a love and hate thing. We'll do a would you rather on it at some point. Harrison, are you ready to crack one open?
Oh yeah, right. We keep talking about all this beer. We have a couple in front of us just sitting there, not getting any colder. Let's open this guy. Here we go. Ooh, beer number 1. There it is. Always excited to join the party.
I got to start opening them farther away from my face. That's a season 3 goal.
Right. We're slowly learning as we go here. So beer number 1 today is Tropicalia. So this comes to us courtesy of Becca, actually, as she was traveling in Georgia, I believe, over the holidays as well, or right afterwards. And from Creature Comforts Brewing Company in Athens, Georgia. This is an American-style IPA, about 6.6%, 65 IBUs, and the notes on it are balanced, soft, and juicy. It's hopped with Citra, Centennial, and Galaxy, which is a pretty cool combo, and almost like a ghost of Christmas past, present, and future there, where like Centennial's this OG high alpha hop. Citra was like the hop of the moment in 2009 and 10 and 11, and then Galaxy was one of the more recent 2015, 16, 17 kind of
Ghost
hops
of Christmas,
the moment.
past,
right.
present, future.
Exactly.
Well said.
Well, so it's a cool little collection there of hops that are been around for a bit and then somewhat newer and all that cool stuff. So, but this looks delicious. It's kind of like golden color. You can see right through it.
Perfectly clear, but a very familiar color. It's just, I hate to say it, but it's missing the haze I've grown accustomed to when I say IPA.
It's all right.
This one rings in at 6.6% ABV. They do list to 65 IBUs. And one of the cool things from Creature Comforts, they're not huge into distribution of their beers. Many of my friends have told me I have to get my hands on this one. This is their top checked-in beer on Untappd. This, if you've had Creature Comforts, you're probably familiar with it, and I see it available pretty much all around Atlanta now. Like this would be the beer I associate with Atlanta craft brewing at least at the moment or the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely like the beer. Let's take a sip.
Oh, that's cool.
Ooh.
Ooh. I don't want to sound like like I'm just feeding into this description, but I swear it gives me three different tastes in the beginning, middle, and end. Yeah. And I'm sure it's not with each hop, but it's almost three different beers. And it's clean, it's refreshing, it's bitter. It's a West Coast made in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I'm probably wrong.
For sure. No, this has definitely got a nice lingering bitterness. It's not overly intense at all, but it's sitting there on my tongue right now, demanding I take another sip of this beer. This is awesome. If you're able to get your hands on this all the time, consider yourself fortunate. And it looks like it really only is in Georgia. I mean, as far as I know, they only officially distribute there, but even other check-ins, other places, Jesse in Georgia, and 130,000 total check-ins, 63,000 plus unique, almost 700 this month. Lucky to have it once before when someone else in the office from Georgia brought it in or was traveling, I guess, friend was. I don't remember how it exactly happened. It was a couple years ago. But anyway, and then checked in as recently as 33 minutes ago. I was doing this podcast right now. Classic IPA from Josie W. Digging it. Yeah, this is great. So again, not hazy at all. See right through it. A fantastic American-style IPA. It is a lot of the kind of East Coast meets West Coast stuff is pretty common where, it's not as crazy bitter as a hop-forward West Coast, but it's definitely...
There's a juiciness
to
there
is, right. Probably...
Now, I always kind of just assumed because Citra hops got really popular around the time beer got really hazy. I assumed that those hops kicked off a lot of haze.
Citra kicks off a crazy amount of haze, but you can filter that stuff out either through a filter or what most breweries use is stuff like Biofine, which will drop out a lot of protein out of the beer before you package it and clear it up like this. Probably the case. I mean, especially, I can't imagine they dry hop this with Citra, although maybe they do, and they just, clean it up before they, through different filtration processes before they package it, because this is not even like hazy at all. Slight chill haze, maybe, but even still, not really. Pretty much see right through it. And it smells great. It's like a little stone fruit for a moment, and I get like a bunch of pine in there. But it's all right. Balance is definitely the word. The word they kind of choose to describe it too. First, it's a balanced, soft and juicy.
It's 6.6. This isn't a beer I would choose to drink like all day, but I think I could. I think I could
Right,
manage.
I could drink it all night. I could drink it for the night. I wouldn't start in the morning with it, but
I don't get. I'm only a few sips in here, and it's just starting to warm up a little bit in my hands. But it doesn't kind of wreck my palate. It begs me to eat something with it. We're actually doing a little bit of research, prompted by Luke, I believe, from the Facebook group, to try and find some ways to pitch beer drinking as healthy.
right.
It's not a way to pitch beer drinking as healthy, but it does act on enzymes in the liver that also make you feel those hunger pangs. Like beer literally makes you chemically hungry. I'm not a doctor, but it's doing this already for me. And as bitter and kind of refreshing as this is, I always go to, I mean, it makes me want like a pizza or a cheeseburger.
Yeah. Huge pizza.
I saw on their brewery page infrequently, but they've done a couple of variants of this.
A lot of them.
The one that I love just based on the name is Tropicaliente, which they brewed with habaneros. That in a taco, come on, my night's just over at that point.
But also just beginning. It looks like they even did a cask of it with Nelson Sauvage and Mosaic, and that was a foggy beast when they did that.
That would have been great.
Looks like just happened in this past summer. They had it at the brewery. It looks like a variant of Tropicalia. And then, citrus one, a grapefruit one. This is great that they're having fun with that. And
that's cool, too. I think a lot of times I'll hear from a brewer that Untappd makes it hard to keep up. Everybody wants a new beer all the time. But if you're Creature Comforts and you've got the success and the brand of Tropicalia, I love the idea of just, making a variant of that, because it's a beer that I love, but I would already want to try this a few different ways.
Yeah. And back in 2015, they made a variant called Truce, like juice and Tropicalia, I guess, combined. Truce, it was a Tropicalia, but they fermented it on a bunch of mango and passion fruit. And the pictures from back then look amazing, and that's an awesome idea as well. So definitely getting a lot out of the Tropicalia. There are a ton of variants of this thing. That's really, that's
awesome. I won't pretend to understand what it's like to come into work and do that every day or come up with a new variant on this beer, but for the people that get to drink it, that's got to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and some of them are natural, just kind of like asks for it. Like obviously dry hopping something in a cask has become pretty common, but all this stuff, sure, you got a juicy beer, let's put some habaneros in it, let's see what grapefruit does. We had it was a milk stout that we made. Pretty straightforward milk stout, but every year we'd put it in a cask with some dehydrated peanut butter powder, and it was like a chocolate peanut butter milk stout. And that we did the first year, and it's one cask. It was the fastest we've ever cleared one. And so next year we did like 3, and it moved like the same amount of time.
You wouldn't have to try very hard to get me to come in for a pint of that.
It was
or
awesome.
A boot or a sandwich or whatever.
Serve it to me whatever you got. Give me a bag of it. But yeah, so again, good on them. But this beer is solid, and it's great how again you can talk all day about the hard to find beers and the ones that are really good and crazy and double dry hopped 100 pounds per barrel. But there's always something to be said for a brewery that consistently can make a really good beer that can be checked in hundreds of thousands of times and just be as interesting and delicious. And this is definitely that. So if you're in Georgia and haven't had this, get it. If you know someone that's there, tell them you're coming to visit for the weekend and get on Untappd to find this thing.
Even if you have had it, one great thing about the badge that Harrison and I are about to talk about is that you'll hopefully have a reason to check it in again while I'm still drinking this beer. Harrison and I, and again, the development, the art team, pretty much almost anybody I can think of at Untappd has had a conversation with us about getting this drinking socially badge off the ground. So Harrison and I are going to just kind of walk through the plan for season 3 in this badge and how it works, and hopefully you guys will have fun with us in earning it.
Yeah. So we're keeping it pretty straightforward to start. You can earn this by drinking one of the beers that John or I have on Drinking Socially.
So basically every episode, Harrison and I are going to do what we've always done. We're going to review 2 beers, sometimes more. We'll do some bonus beers. They'll be listed in the show notes.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly. We'll link them at the end of the show notes. So you can, really important if we're doing, like, we're talking about variants or vintages and stuff like that, so you can know exactly which one that we had and therefore which one unlocks the badge. So we'll make that pretty clear in the notes to the show. And obviously while we're drinking them too.
Totally. Talk about them just like we always do. And then with this particular badge, every time you drink one of the beers that we've had, you'll earn or you'll level up the Drinking Socially badge. So if you drink Tropicalia, you'll earn Drinking Socially level 1. If you drink the next beer we open, you'll already be at level 2, and you can drink them as much as you want, but it only counts once.
Right. So yeah, it's not like 5 to get you to the next level like a lot of the other badges in Untappd. This one is each beer gets you that next level, which is pretty cool. That being said, it's not meant to as a contest. We all know we won't be able to keep up with some of you guys looking at your year in beers, but this is not, the volume is not the name of the game with this. It's, if you can get your hands on a beer we have, perfect. One will do, and that'll get you the next level of this badge.
Absolutely. It's not meant to be possible to max this out. Don't take that as a challenge.
Right. It can't happen.
Just like tonight, for instance, Harrison and I are drinking this beer from Creature Comforts. Correction, they're based out of Athens, which is east of Atlanta. But if you don't live or have a friend around that area, it's going to be really hard for you to find this beer unless you go to a festival. So we're going to try. I think, Harrison, we have some ideas about changing the way we look at beer for this season based on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're looking for, always looking for ways to get beer from across the pond or the Great White North. If you, up in Bob and Doug McKenzie land, or really anywhere, because we know that there are people listening to this all over the world. So, and that a lot of the beers we have aren't available everywhere. So, very aware of that now that we have this badge that anyone can be a part of. So we're going to do what we can to get our hands on some really cool beer that's available all over this crazy globe we all live on and share and are drinking across.
There is a whole lot of it. I was talking to Greg earlier. The beer database on Untappd is over 6 million different beers right now. Harrison and I are planning on putting about 55 on the badge for season 3.
Right.
So it's going to be, we'll release it in the Untappd blog. There'll be a post about the badge. You can get a preview of it, check it out, figure out the stipulations on how to earn it, and we'll list all the beers that are available on that badge there, including if you have any left of Anchor's Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. You can go back and crack one of those and still earn the badge from there as well. It'll be any beer on season 3.
Indeed. Cool stuff. All right, so pumped about that. Again, real excited that we're here and we're doing it, and excited to see your check-ins and earning the badge out there. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think it'll be really fun, and like we said, one of the things about the Facebook group that I really love is seeing what people are drinking, and this will be kind of a fun way. If you hear Harrison and I talk about a beer and you want to go out of your way to get it, or if it's convenient for you to get it, at least you'll be able to kind of earn that badge with us or celebrate it with us. It will not have our photos on the badge. That was the one rule that Greg made clear. Speaking of the Drinking Socially group on Facebook, we introduced a new segment to the podcast, Would You Rather, on the last episode. And I think the most interesting, it wasn't actually me, it was one of the members of the Drinking Socially group turned that into a poll on there.
Yeah.
And there was, it was amazing. There was about 120 people out of 130 that answered that said they would rather drink a new beer every time.
Yeah, that clearly won.
I think that's an easy win, even though drinking the same beer is good. It's not meant to be easy.
Right. I was almost on the same beer every time, and then flipped last minute.
There were some people that had a hard time choosing one or the other. I plan on making Harrison experience this for every episode. But one of the members of the group, Lars, actually had a really cool idea of, would you rather have to cycle through all 205 styles of beer before you can come back to your favorite style. Like if I drink a New England IPA today, I have to drink 204 other styles before, which that honestly, I think that would be really fun, but also problematic when I'm trying to watch a football game.
Right.
And I go from stout to grisette to wild fermented sour.
Exactly right.
But that group's been, especially with the year in beer, and the New Year's resolutions and people talking about dry January. It was really fun to see everybody posting on there. People were asking if dry January is something that we'd all be participating in.
Sure.
For Harrison and I, the answer is clearly going to be no. But one fun way to partake is that a couple of breweries, Fair State and Harpoon, just made a beer called Dry January.
Perfect.
So that's one way to partake and still have some fun. The Untappd Discord project countered Dry January by doing Wet January, and they're giving you points for checking into beers that are above 10%.
Right. Wow, doubling down.
That is dangerous. The exact opposite direction, but those guys are amazing. They do a really good job of keeping track and just adding another layer of fun to Untappd. We'll put a link to their post, their Reddit post, in the show notes. But other than that, I think we should probably talk about, is there maybe a cool way we can save money on Untappd merchandise, Harrison?
Well, there always is, John.
There always is. Let's get to that. We'll jam out to some cool new music, and we'll be right back for a new beer. Want to show off your love of Untappd? Check out our online store and pick up Untappd branded glassware, shirts, sweatshirts, hats, more. Depending on how hot or cold you are, go to store.untappd.com and enter the coupon code podcast when you check out. That'll get 20% off anything you order. That's store.untappd.com. Use the coupon code podcast, 20% off for you. Plus, it lets them know that you guys are listening, and we love that here. Now, getting into the second beer of the show, this one's I'm kind of excited. The next beer we're going to drink is called Speed Merchant. Mm-hmm. It's from Platform Beer Company out of Cleveland. Really cool story about Platform that I hope Harrison shares. But otherwise, this is 6.6 ABV, 66 IBUs listed. So virtually the same beer on paper, except this is listed as a white IPA.
Right.
Fruity, tropical hops, and the wheat is going to give it a little bit of a different color. But from Platform, this is their top checked-in beer as well. So kind of, I don't know, we'll compare an Ohio Titan with a Georgia Titan here in this one.
Sure. And this one, 33,000 plus total check-ins. Ooh, there she is. 24,000 unique. And it is classified as a white IPA, which is so wild to me that anyone even says that anymore, because as far as I remember, essentially in the early days, before like everything was in New England, it was kind of like beers in New England that were hazy were New England IPAs or Northeast IPAs. And then if you made one somewhere else, it was like a white IPA. And then New England became a style. And then if you had a white IPA, you just changed the name to
marketing
New England IPA. So, I mean, as far I think the point they're trying to make, though, is highlight the white wheat, which is really cool and is a different kind of wheat than what you see probably in a lot of New England's, where they probably used like torrefied or unmalted, like rolled wheat, which is unmalted, so it really can mess up your mash, but it does kind of improve the mouthfeel, make it a bigger mouthfeel. Obviously, kicks off a lot of haze. White wheat is a malted wheat, and it kicks off as much protein, or has a lot of protein on it to create a lot of haze too. But it's easier to work with. It's not going to turn your mash into oatmeal like an unmalted wheat might. So yeah, there's kind of three different kinds of wheat. There's the unmalted, the red wheat, which is just like regular wheat or normal, if you will, wheat that is malted, and then white wheat, which is a different species of wheat that's not doesn't look as have like that red hue of what most wheat looks like when it is malted. So what they're using here, and that's why they're naming it that, just to kind of highlight that side of it. And it looks like a New England IPA. It looks hazy.
100%. Look in the glass is entirely different than the incredibly see-through Creature Comforts beer. Some classic examples of white IPAs, whether you already had them or are looking for some to compare. Chainbreaker from Deschutes.
Yep.
That one's pretty big. Galaxy White from Anchorage. Anchorage is a great brewery up in Alaska.
Yep.
It's a year-round for them if you happen to be up there.
Mm-hmm.
The Long Thaw from Harpoon. I don't know if it used to be a seasonal beer. I don't know if they still do that. I see Accumulation from New Belgium. That's the one that I generally like. I've had that beer many times without really even thinking about it being a white IPA.
Yeah.
Can I assume, aside from the marketing lingo that may make a brewer decide whether he wants to call it a New England or a white, generally Harris and I've always kind of viewed him as almost like a wheat beer that got turned into an IPA. Like,
that was right. So it's interesting, and we could spend a fair amount of time kind of talking about the parallel evolutions, if you will, of what we now all refer to as New England or hazy IPAs. Even the New England has started to drop off, and now people just kind of refer to them as hazy IPAs. Overall. But like there was I'm trying to remember which brewery it was. But yes, there were a lot of breweries that started making hoppy wheat beers.
Yep, I remember Boulevard's 80 Acre.
Right.
That beer was great.
And I think Ithaca did one as well. That was like it was explained, or on the label said, a hoppy wheat beer. And that was like iteration 1.
Was that Flower Power?
No, Flower Power is just their American IPA, but I forget what it was. I think their Excelsior 13. It was like a crazy beer they bottle conditioned, and it was absolutely amazing. It was one of the first hazy hoppy beers I'd ever had from Ithaca, but they described it as like a hoppy wheat beer. Okay. And so like that's one brewery's version of kind of telling the same story with different words. You know, it's
like now if I see an IPA and they say it was flaked oats, kind of get me excited. Right. I assume it'll have a different mouthfeel, if anything.
Yeah,
and have cool adjuncts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly right. So some of them exactly right. Like Chainbreaker. They use malted wheat. They use a bunch of different kinds of wheat in that beer. So there's malted and unmalted. It's just hopped more, but like how they got there, it's got, obviously the New England was, let's make hazy beers, or let's make unfiltered beers at a time when there were a lot of hops kicking off a lot of haze, and let's add some wheat to it because let's be crazy and check it out. I mean, that'd be a fun story to have, to talk to the alchemist to kind of see like what crawled up your brain and said, let's do this.
But much like the invention of chocolate chip cookies, right, which my mom would tell you was an accident by someone making biscuits and chocolate chips fell in the... I mean, that seems weird that your chocolate chips would be so carelessly stored above your biscuit mixing. But however we got there, I'm very grateful for both New England IPAs and chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, as are we all. But the point I'm trying to make is that we kind of, a lot of breweries and a lot of regions got to this same place differently. And I see white IPA as almost interchangeable. You could argue, as a New England IPA or a hazy IPA, you could argue that most white IPAs aren't focused as much on like the double dry hopping, that whole aromatic game that almost every New England is. And maybe that at the end of the day is the measurable difference. But you line them up and blindfold me, or not even, just line up a white IPA with a hoppy wheat ale, with a New England, with a hazy, with a unfiltered juicy, and I'm going to have a hard time telling you kind of what's what. And that's just kind of where we're at right now, I think. A lot of it's regional. Actually, another thing that's really important is, as we know, traditionally, New Englands are lower on the IBU side of things. White IPAs don't care about that. Where you could be a more bitter, hazy beer and call yourself a white IPA. Whereas traditionally New Englands were late hop additions, not a lot of bitterness. So I guess a couple things can highlight them, but there is no like hard and fast. You can't dry hop it. It has to be more bitter.
So many rules and so many gray areas. I'm watching Harrison taste this one, and I'm right behind you, man. I'm excited.
I love this beer.
I've never had this beer.
It's so good. This beer is awesome, and they must dry hop it at least once. I mean, it's so...
Ooh, wow. Right. Totally different.
Yep. I mean, very different than, Creature Comforts, absolutely.
Holy cow.
There's a certain smoothness to it. You definitely get that like wheat kind of coating your mouth a little bit, that as the hops do as well. Very fruity, a lot of stone fruit in the nose. A lot of mangoes in there and stuff.
Instantly, I would say that this compares much more with the beers that are on trend today.
Right.
It's not aggressively bitter. It's fruity on the nose and on the initial sip, and to use an overused word, mouthfeel is, I mean, it's so easy I could almost pound this in 2 or 3 sips without even thinking twice about it.
I did. The first time I had it, I was gone in like a moment. Kind of, gulped it right down there. So more of a stronger hop character than you may find in bitterness than you may find, but it's not overly powering at all. Again, it's balanced just by looking at the stats about it.
On the can, one thing that I'm just noticing here, like can design for both of these, I'm not a designer like Tim or Kyle to tell you one from the other, but what I love about the platform beer is they give me a breakdown. Yep. It's got 2-row wheat, carafoam, acidulated grains. They tell me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hops, including Centennial, Simcoe, Citra, Comet and Chinook. They tell me it's an American ale yeast, and the adjunct is flaked wheat. Like they break down this beer on the label for me. And if I understand correctly, Platform's origins kind of did they? I believe I've heard. So this already is incredible,
exciting.
But I should say that I know that I've heard that when Platform kind of originally set up, it was almost like a brewery incubator.
Right.
Or like a startup where you would go there and brew beers. And I'm understanding, maybe this I'm making up or filling in the blanks, but they kind of hit on Speed Merchant and it was a good beer. So they started making it. And now they're in Cleveland and Cincinnati. I think they've got a coffee company. But I mean, they've definitely made the Ohio beer scene something of a nationwide lure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was founded by Paul Brenner, who used to, or maybe still does, own a homebrew supply store, so into the homebrew game, and Justin Carson, who owned like a draft line cleaning service, and I mean, it's pretty much hit the nail on the head. It was kind of started out as like a secondary mission being to educate and facilitate kind of the brewing education for the greater Cleveland area. And with that, came lots of experimentation, and they definitely nailed it on this one in terms of a beer that is reproducible, approachable, but from someone which I only had it once before, John, the first time today, it's great. Like it's enjoyable each time I've had it so far, and I can, again, if you get your hands on it, this is an awesome beer to be in every 6-pack shop out there, and knowing it's always just a quick drive away. But this is it's pretty solid, and I do love that they list everything about it that you can on that can, because that does make drinking it a little more interesting when you can read a bit about it.
And of course, as a disclaimer, I'll list that Platform was sort of recently, maybe in the last year, if I can remember, time kind
August
of phased,
2019.
Acquired by Anheuser-Busch. If you're ever kind of wondering, it's not the end-all source for information, but what I like is that over the last couple of years, Untappd will let you know if you go to Platform's brewery page, it's a subsidiary of Anheuser-Busch. I haven't had this beer when Platform was tiny and small, but having it right now, it's still a very drinkable beer, and I see that they've done with this one in particular, just like Creature Comforts, there's variants with Pineapple Speed Merchant and stuff like that as well.
That's awesome. I mean, to especially a beer like this, it is your flagship, to kind of reinvent it. I'm sure it's something that as a brewmaster you want to do, and kind of get curious about what if we tweaked this or changed this, and to experiment with that stuff. It's probably why most brewers get into this, is the obviously it's mostly science, but to have fun with it and tweak some things, dry up some stuff, change things around, and see how people respond to that, how you respond to it. We used to do it not often, but often enough where it was exciting every time we would slightly change a beer. Sometimes out of necessity, like a hop contact would run out from something, and we'd be like, "Oh, this is what the Brewers Association recommends you replace it with," and now we would dry hop with something different. And all right, when is that? When gonna keg, and when can we taste that beer? And we would then save some of that and test each other on blind taste testing of what is different about each one of these beers to kind of compare it, and can we perceive the difference side by side in a double blind study. So definitely, and that's kind of getting intense with it. It's also just fun to throw some pineapple in a wet IPA and see what happens.
But that's a really like, I remember when Ballast Point. I heard this from the Ballast Point sales rep years and years ago, but they acquired or bought a farm so they could grow their own hops, so they wouldn't have to worry about that for, I can't remember if it was Grunion or Sculpin or whatever it was, but I mean, Sierra Nevada's made the same torpedo forever. It'd be silly of me to assume they haven't had to make slight adjustments over the last 30, 40 years. They
say that on the bottom of every page on their website, something along the lines of, brewing is as much art as science, and any, the brewer always at the brewmaster's discretion to change any of these ingredients based on availability and freshness and all that stuff, which is
I
very
prefer
real.
that.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I'd want my chef to do that as well.
Exactly,
Please don't serve me
old
soft shell
parsley,
crab in North Dakota. That'd be weird.
Exactly.
I still order it, but
exactly. Yeah, but you don't want to do it just because you're supposed to do it if it's not going to create a quality product. So, and that's kind of an unspoken, I guess, if you will, rule or understanding in this industry, is that just you're dealing with organic ingredients that change themselves, and availability changes. Kind of have to be flexible with that, because knowing at any moment you could have a bad year, and the Centennial thought you were going to get, you're only getting half of it, and okay, what do you do next? You have to have a plan for that. So, but anyway, this is great. I definitely want to try more from them. Bummed I haven't. Curious to see if perhaps that being part of ABI starts seeing them in more places now.
On Untappd, I can see they're in like Pittsburgh and Indianapolis, and so hopefully that if there is any win outside of maybe healthcare and a paid vacation, finally, as a brewer, maybe more people can get their hands on this as well.
Yeah, because this is great. This is a really good beer. It's well made. It's tasty.
It makes me want like an avocado blue cheese fruit salad. It tastes like it would survive well with that or complement it well.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
I'm hungry, Harrison.
I can tell, John.
Let's get to one of the segments that Becca was really excited to introduce. She kind of spoke with Harrison and I about it. And initially she just said, how about Mount Beermore? And I had no idea what that was, and I wanted to play along. Like, of course, Mount Beermore, that everybody. But she kind of introduced it as like, all right, we all know, most of us know what Mount Rushmore is.
Right.
For those of us that don't, it is a mountain in the United States of America in South Dakota that was carved mainly from dynamite out of mainly granite, which has honestly really impressive visages of four presidents early on in American history. And the idea is those presidents were kind of iconic to the founding fathers of America. Let's make a Mount Beermore for John and Harrison, and hopefully for any lucky or unlucky soul that's on here as an interview. We can ask them who would be on their own Mount Beermore. So the premise of this is that Harrison and I will kind of roll out our George Washington here.
Yep.
And hopefully before halfway through the year, we'll be able to fill up our four essentially most important beers.
Yes.
To mine to me
us,
and Harrison, yours to you,
to
of course.
Our own beer journeys. And then maybe have some fun with it too along the way, kind of test out some other versions of Mount Beermore, looking at other factors in the beer world. But yeah, I love this idea. I thought it was great. It makes you kind of always good to reflect, especially the beginning of a new year, kind of look back, new season, drinking socially, and see what got me here, what's kind of been the go-tos or the beers that really inspired you, got you excited, made you step back and go, whoa, or simply just is the thing your blanket, your favorite Disney movie in a glass.
Fake day at home, chicken noodle soup
right.
beer.
That?
We still, for the last almost year, have asked people joining the Facebook group, what's the beer that got you into craft beer?
Yeah.
And, you get a variety of answers, but basically it's like, the first time I had a beer that wasn't a giant domestic beer, or the first time my friendship, rarely do I get the response that, it was Platform Speed Merchant and it's the only beer I drink it every day.
Right.
No one ever says that. But I think that there should be some homage paid to whatever it was that moment that took you from I'm not really sure about beer, or it's just a thing I have to drink 12 of, to holy cow, this opens up a whole new world.
Yeah. Yeah. And that could happen. Yeah. For me, it's happened a bunch, but this has been very fun, and it'll probably be an exercise more of elimination than addition for me of picking just 4, but that's good. It'll force me to really kind of think about it and choose wisely. But for me, beer 1 was pretty easy.
I noticed you were writing the answer down before I even really finished explaining it.
Right. It can't go. It's peas in a pod. Good old Sierra Nevada Pale Ale and me. So that would be probably my Desert Island beer. Certainly the George Washington. Sure, we'll say the George Washington of my Mount Beermore. I'm excited to get to my Teddy Roosevelt. If we're gonna,
aren't we all?
Yeah. So, but for me, that was a quick one up there without much hesitation. Without that, I would certainly not be here today. And really, for the reason, not just because it's a good beer and it's been made well for a long time, and it is important for craft beer as a whole, but I think the first time I drank it was in like a dive bar in Baltimore, and it was Memorial Day weekend, and I like snuck in out of the heat and the gross asphalt and the sweat and the people of that day, and was like, I'm hungry. This place will do. Let me get some nachos and I'll take that beer. And I remember thinking, whoa, this is really, really, really hoppy. I don't know. And I was in college at the time. Like, I don't know if this is for me. And then as the nachos and the heat happened and I kept drinking it, I was like, something's happening now, right? Like I'm having an experience that's kind of symbiotic and something's going on in my brain. And, and the beginning was ominous, but it turned out to be a great day that I still remember, now many, many, many years later, of it in a single afternoon, going from a thing that was, kind of just there to, kind of weird and different to, holy cow, what else? What else can I find? Kind of chasing that carrot, if you will, and still grabbing at it today. But started probably in that moment, certainly an early memory for me that stuck with me. But John, where are you at?
Well, based on your answer, I want to change mine now, but it's already written down
in stone in the mountain.
So perhaps I will have a different Thomas Jefferson than I initially planned. But for my George Washington, for me, it's the most important craft beer for me, maybe of my whole life. It's Founders All Day. I know, we're Founders, good or bad, or whatever mistakes they may have made. This beer transcends. For me, this is the beer that I use to introduce people to an IPA.
Yeah,
it's the beer that I buy a 15-pack of when I'm going to the beach. It's my fridge beer, and for me, it's the most important because it's the beer that I compare. Not, a barrel-aged stout to. Those are different.
Right.
But when I'm drinking, even like the 2 beers we've had tonight, I kind of in my head, I'm comparing them to my Founders All Day. That's the one I want to drink forever. Or I could. It's the one I should say. It's the one. If I went the other way on my Would You Rather for the last episode, and every beer had to be the same one,
that was it.
It would be Founders All Day. Disclaimer or asterisk, I really hope to find a new Founders All Day in 2020.
Yeah.
This platform's ABV is a little bit too high for that, but I'm really excited about the hazy session beers that I hope to see in 2020 because even Founders All Day, it's aged now, and I'm looking for something that I can drink and wash and repeat without thinking about it that gives me a new flavor. Is it mean to want to replace my George Washington already?
No, it's fine, John. It's
that
okay.
beer's important to me because it took me to a place where craft beer wasn't just, holy cow, I got really drunk on that Belgian triple.
Right.
But it took me to a place where this is a beer I can drink all day long.
Yeah. Truly, yeah, the perfect name for it. And I think it's gotten better with time. Like the Aldi IPA you go get one right now in early 2020. I mean, I drank a lot of it over this summer, and I remember liking it then more than I ever have. So that's always good too, to revisit something you had that you liked and then had it again and liked it even more for similar reasons. So great selection.
Palates change, I guess, just as much as brewing recipes too.
Sure. Oh yeah. But stick with us. We're going to keep building out our Mount Bearmore. So keep checking back. We'll keep you updated as we kind of keep reflecting and re-drinking some beers maybe we haven't had in a while to aid in that reflection and
encourage you to think of your own too. I mean, what's the most important craft beer in your life?
Yeah, I mean, and don't rush. You don't need to. It can be a journey. Take your time with it. We're not doing all four today for a reason. But if you have your all four, go ahead and share it with us. Jump on that Drinking Socially Facebook group. I'm sure a lot of you guys do, and we'll be pumped to check that stuff out.
And hopefully you'll be pumped for the next, the recurring session on Drinking Socially Season 3, Would You Rather?
Oh, boy.
The stats we gathered kind of alluded to them already. There was 6.4% of respondents said that they would rather drink the same beer all the time. So no matter how important your George Washington is, it's always important to be, manifest destiny, keep pressing westward, find new beers.
Yes.
I think that's really exciting to see.
It is.
Harrison and I were actually trying to come up with this just before we started to record.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to come up with a realistic repercussion.
Right.
They're all make-believe.
Sure.
They're in a pretend world. It's designed to be a really difficult question to answer. But this one is kind of prompted by the dry January, we'll say, celebrations. But mainly my beginning is, we've all had a hangover. Maybe not all of us, but some of us have, and they're definitely worse as you get older.
Yeah.
So the question I pose to you and to you, Harrison, is would you rather drink whatever beer you want, as many as you want, and never feel a hangover, never feel the effects, never feel a buzz, never ever get a hangover? You could drink Two Hearted all day long.
Right.
Never feel the effects. Or drink whatever you want, still feel the buzz, but feel a hangover every time. It's initially when I was putting it together, especially with Harrison, we were trying to come up with a way to make this tough to answer. And I think we might have made this one too difficult.
Well, right, because it's always enjoyable to kind of, at the end of the day, have couple beers, relax, have that, help you sink into the couch a little bit more. Maybe that your neck hurts and then it doesn't after 2 Hearted or 5. And
5 Hearted, yeah.
5 Hearted, right. And stuff like that. But then also, right, my day starts whenever a small child decides to elbow me in the head in the dark at, 4 a.m. So to have a headache on top of that, it's a price I've paid and don't want to pay anymore. But at the same time, right, what am I doing at that point? Consuming all these beers, other than obviously enjoying how awesome they taste. That is why you should be drinking beers, not to some end of just
the taste the taste in today's beer world is amazing, but the effects are what I think make beer more exciting than obviously responsible effects. I'm not talking about drink so much platform you drive to Cleveland
exactly right.
Or Uber there,
wake up there tomorrow.
That's a little bit too much.
Yeah, but it's right. So you're kind of faced with this, right? There are obviously beneficial effects to drinking a couple beers and having it relax you, and Exactly. Make things more enjoyable, whatever it is. But yeah, also, if now you're saying the world I live in is every time I drink, I can become, feel the effects of it, but then also always have a hangover or drink as much beer as I want, which that's exciting to me, and then also not feel the effects of it. I mean, first of all, if that's the world we live in, where everyone can drink as much as they want, but you're not being impacted by it, I think YouTube disappears. I think all these great videos of people falling off couches and tables and trying to jump over their friend's car, none of that happens anymore, and we're just kind of left with a big void there of what do I do to break up the day now? I can't watch somebody fall off a lawn chair down a staircase. It's just not happening. So, that's something's going to have to replace that. I don't know. I don't know what that is. Something will fill that void though. But in the process, I'm able to enjoy a ton more beer in a kind of a new way. Yeah, I mean it's tough. You're right. It's tough because initially that's what I want because hangovers are the worst. But terrible. You give up a lot. You're giving up, that kind of magical, the spirit side of this beer we've all come to know and love, that is kind of transcendent and unique to it. So it's tough. I mean, I think I land on I think just because, right, like you said, when you get older, hangovers hit you like a bus. I guess I'd walk away from that and just drink more bourbon, John. Over to you.
Oh, you found the loophole, I see. Didn't see that coming. So it's I mean, obviously the perfect answer is I'd rather turn off the hangover and then, turn on the effects when I need them. Mm-hmm. But in this case, I don't think if I wouldn't feel the effects and I would never have a hangover, it would be great. I could drink all the beer in my cellar, in my fridge. I could go out for lunch and have a bourbon barrel stout at 12% because they do taste amazing.
Yeah, they do.
And I wouldn't have to worry about coming back after lunch and saying, holy cow, how do I stay awake now? But for me, it's I would have to choose drinking beer without the elation that comes from a 12% bourbon barrel stout. Even if the effects were problematic, I think I wouldn't want one without the other. Of course, I had one hangover in 2019 that made me want to stop everything. That was a 37-year-old hangover that was a big welcome home. But for me, I would choose to keep the effects. I think ultimately the question that we're asking is, are you willing to give up the good and the bad, or do you want to live with them both?
Right.
We were trying to come up with a would you rather that kind of played on the dry January thing,
Sure.
And this was about, I think, as close as we could get. And for me, I'll keep the bad and the good. I'm not excited about more bad,
Right.
But I don't think for me it's not worth it to get rid of the good. That's how I'm going to rationalize it in my head.
Right. And, for what it's worth, this is not recommended, but if you could drink whatever you want and then always feel a hangover, I mean, theoretically, couldn't you also then, as soon as that hangover started, just start drinking again?
I mean,
and just live on the hair of the dog until
we didn't get very medical in this. I suppose
right.
You either keep drinking beer and never feel the effects, or you keep drinking beer and never feel hungover. At some point,
you're just waiting.
There's only so much all day in the world.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, I got to go to work. I got to bring a Camelback full of Bud Light just to sit through the day,
so I don't pass out and throw up on my VP's feet. Yeah, right. Well, but if that's the world you live in, you're right. Then maybe that's the industry you want to invest in, is kind of the Camelbacks for beer.
Yep.
Which is just a Camelback.
Yeah,
but
you have gallon flasks.
Right. I need one for tonight, one for another half liter for the morning. That sounds like that doesn't end well.
It's an I would consider myself an irresponsible person for saying I want to keep the good. and live with the bad versus get rid of the bad and miss out on the good. But I mean, when I've done it responsibly, 3, 4, 5 beers, sometimes we've gone pretty heavy at a bottle share, and I do pay for it the next day. But there's one time I karaoke'd, 2 times in my life I've danced. Right. So there's been times where beer has really brought me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, that transcendence. Yeah,
that's not my favorite part about beer, but it's a nice random event.
Right, to dance with the bubbly lady, as they say. No one says that.
Yeah. Hopefully they do now.
Oh man.
Becca showed me a whole list of weird beer names that were from 300, 400, 500 years ago. They used to call, like neck oil used to be a slang term for beer.
Yeah, I think doesn't Beavertown
does
a neck oil?
Yep. And I didn't even put 2 and 2 together until I was reading through some really bad ones too. But
I'm sure.
Maybe one day we'll talk about those more. In the meantime, I'm hoping that your Mount Beermore is being slowly crowded. It took the United States well over what was planned to get theirs finished. I think it was somewhere around 15 years, we'll say, start to finish. And mainly it got finished because funding ran out. But hopefully it doesn't take you 15 years to get yours. Ponder on the would you rather. Enjoy beer when you drink it. And thanks for listening to Harrison and I walk through another inside look at Untappd and beer.
Yeah.
Until then, show notes will be available at podcast.untappd.com or wherever you listen. If you have any questions or feedback, connect with Untappd directly on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Connect directly with Harrison and I and the Facebook group Drinking Socially. You'll find all these links in the show notes, but otherwise...
Yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Cheers.
Cheers.